Hi and welcome to Abraz Around the House. Today I'm going to be going over my deck rebuild project that took over a year to complete from start to finish, and it was quite the project, working on weekends and whenever I had time available to be able to do it. Did it by myself, so that of course takes a little bit longer to do, and then after going through hours and hours of video and trying to crunch this thing into somewhat a manageable video and one that could be navigated easily. So many videos these days, it almost looks like they do it in a day or a weekend, but to be honest, most projects take a lot longer than that, and especially when you're videoing them and trying to document things that will help other people. I know I go through a lot of videos on YouTube whenever I'm preparing to do a project and need some insight, and so that's really what I hope this does for someone else. I will break this down into chapters, so if one portion is not what you're looking for, feel free to browse to the next chapter. I will also put all of the tools and materials that it takes to complete this project in the description. So if you want more information on that, make sure you go to the description and you'll find all of those tools and materials. I want to thank you for taking the time to view this video, and if you wouldn't mind to like and subscribe, that will really help the channel out. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great day and God bless. Welcome to Abraz Around the House. This is a deck renovation project here, and this is when we purchased the house, and while it wasn't in terrible shape, it was in need of repair in several places, and this is a couple of years in, and I'd done a couple repairs up to this point, but it was ready for a complete makeover. So we're going to get started on that project. One of the hardest parts about a job like this is the sheer size and scope of it, and knowing that you're going to be tackling it by yourself. So that was the hardest part about just getting started. It's Jazzy over here, she's passed on, but she was our family dog for many years. About 97 degrees the day I started, and so I questioned myself more than once on whether or not I should be doing this, but here we go. So my goal here is to preserve the structure of the deck so that I can use it for the new decking. So I'm taking my time here, getting all the nails out and getting all the bolts out, that type of thing, so that I can preserve the structure as best as possible. I try to clean up as much as I can as I go. I was collecting nails as I went, and that's why you see that trash can there. So I started taking this decking off and was using a crowbar and hammer, and I quickly realized that that wasn't going to work, and so I bought this tool, which was a game changer for prying off of the decking and the nails. I'll list that in the description with a link if anyone is interested. Best $65 I ever spent right here. The structure really was in pretty good condition overall, and I did question a little bit, but it made good sense to go ahead and keep it because I'm going to be doing some waterproofing on it as well, so that should preserve it even more. But the boards were in pretty good shape, so I didn't feel the need to replace that. Right here you could really tell the shape that the wood was in as far as needing replacement. You can see the rotting on that post there, and here you can see I went to a jacket while I'm working, so you can see we've stretched into the fall here. Also here you can see I'm using these pieces of plywood on the joists to just support me as I'm working. I just never felt comfortable walking on those joists, even though it was only about 6 foot or so down to the ground. I don't see how these guys do it that are up high in the air. Yeah, it felt pretty good getting this completed, so I did a little celebrating there. And now for some cleanup. Hey everybody, here today on my deck that has been demoed in terms of the decking off of the top. I'm going to try to keep the bones of it and replace anything that needs to be replaced, but for the most part we're almost there, and so I'm going to start on my Trex Rain Escape right now. So I have everything that I need to get started on that, and basically by the way, beautiful day out here, November the 3rd, and Friday here, and just a little bit of breeze, about 65 degrees I think is going to be the high, so I'm taking advantage of this weather. Hopefully we can get this project in before winter. But the Trex Rain Escape is made up of several components. You have mainly something to kind of catch the water at the end, and that's called the downspout. So the downspout is going to basically direct the water into my guttering, which will be underneath. It's installed underneath and directed away from the house. And also part of the Trex Rain Escape is what's called the trough. So this will run the length of the deck between the joists and direct the water into this downspout. So it's supposed to be a pretty simple process. We'll see about that. Usually works better for 2 guys on this project, but I'm by myself. So you notice I have created a little bit of a work area with the plywood. I just don't trust myself walking on joists. I don't do it every day, so I don't want to risk life and limb for this project. So basically, I created a little work area. We'll just keep moving that back as I go, and it will be a little bit of a process, but good things take time, right? So I have my stapler here, which I'll be using to attach the trough to the joists, and then we also have this butyl caulk rain escape, and we'll be using it in between these layers as we overlap them going down the deck. Then on top of that, after the staples are put in to hold it in place, we use the butyl tape. This is a Trex Rain Escape butyl tape, and we'll do a little different process over here. We will use tape, but it's a little wider along the house where the deck meets the house. So looking forward to this. We'll see how things go, see how the work progresses, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks. This first downspout was a little bit smaller. It didn't have the full 16 inches like the rest, so I had to configure that one in a different direction. So I had to put in these spacer 2x4s to account for that. That's the only one I had to do like that. The rest are all 16 inch on center. So when I'm down on this end, basically trying to create a drop. On this end, and wherever I decide that drop's going to be finished at, so then I'll go ahead and put my first staple in, and then just kind of naturally follow it back and keep it as straight through here as I can. And that's been the battle, really, is being not wrinkling this as you go. So you kind of find where that natural point is. And then I just kind of make sure that it's smooth, and then just keep working my way back. So we're still smooth here. And so it's naturally going to work its way off of this edge in that process. So. Sometimes as I work my way here, I realize that I have to maybe pull that last staple and readjust it a little bit, so I'm going to do that. So as you can see, as I work this plastic, still nice and straight, still decreasing the drop, but right here, that wrinkle right there, I'm probably going to have to pull that staple and kind of just adjust it a little bit there. And I've got a pretty good drop. That one actually turned out better than this one here, but so almost level right here. Almost level right here, and then just slowly we got a drop. And so now I'll come back and hit more staples to fill in any spaces that I have. So, all right, now for the butyl tape. So what's supposed to happen with this tape is that it will, when I put my decking on and run a screw, when I run a screw through the tape, it seals around that screw. So depending on that, hopefully it works. What I found that works best with the tape is to get yourself a good starting point and peel off a few inches like that, halfway on each side, and then just run it. Move my fingers inside here, run it until I get a good spot, a good stretch, and then I just fill that. And run that. And just keep doing it that way. Come down a little bit further. Pull. Seal that seam. Just get started in the middle and just press it out. Learn as you go. You run it on out and then just cut it off. Hold this end. So when I get to the end here, I usually just cut it at an angle where these troughs are, and then just flatten it out. Because I'll be coming along after I put my end cap on. I'll be coming along and taping all this edge too as well. Alright, well, all I have is one more run of tape and this will be done. I do have, on this end, in these troughs, you do need to cut about a 1/2 inch and about 1.5 to 2 inches long and bend that over. What happens is the water runs down, and if you don't bend that over right there, cut it and bend it over, it'll whip back. So this will create a little ledge. Basically it just drops off into the trough. So alright, run my last run of tape here and then I'll be ready to be tackling all the edges up against the house next. It's quite an accomplishment. Got my steps taken off, rebuild those. But got all this done, all against the house. I got all that sealed up. And now I'm ready to start putting down the decking. See if I can get it done before Christmas. Well, it's raining, dry underneath.
I have to wash it.
You think so?
You have to wash it.
You have to wash it. You have to wash it. No, you have to wash it. You're not throwing these at me. Ah! No! 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 Save me!
No. I will save you in a minute.
Leaf monster. Hey. Well, all of the supplies arrived and getting ready to get this big job started. I'm gonna put all the decking materials under here. Right there. You'll notice the stairs aren't there, so I had already disassembled those and got rid of all of the scrap material. Deck materials magically appeared. Working by yourself, you have to get a little bit creative, and I would use some braces to help hold items in place while I put a screw in them, and then I could finish it off. Been using these Fascia Master headlocks for all of the joists here that I'm running. I'm using both the 4.5 inch and the 2 7/8. So basically what I've got here is I had to extend this out with 2 more 2x10s as I wrap it around so that my railing will have something to attach to. So here I am using some clamps to pull the joist to even it up. Adding these extra 2x10s kind of served a dual purpose in that it gave me the extra room that I needed for the picture frame on top, for the decking on top, and also I needed something solid to tie my deck rail posts to. I'm adding the butyl tape to the outside perimeter of the deck, to those areas where I had just added the 2x10s. First board going on for the picture frame, and it's supposed to allow a little bit of a gap here for when it gets warmer it'll expand. So it's supposed to be an 1/8 of an inch gap. Goes against everything within me not to make this butt up against it tight, but I'm assuming they know what they're talking about, so I'll allow a gap. I'm not going to go quite an 1/8, about a 16th I think. So I've got it lined up going back toward the house, and I've got it lined up going across the front here. So let's go with the first screw. So as I'm putting the picture frame portion of the decking on, I really took extra time here just to make sure I had everything correct in terms of the space needed for not only the screws and getting them into solid material, but also the overhang to allow for the fascia board that I'd be adding to the perimeter. We'll go every 16 inches, 2 screws. Some of these areas I hadn't really explored or discovered, I guess, the plug system for the Trex decking, and so I instituted that a little later, and I did go back on some of these areas and plug. I'd had to take the screw out to ream the hole for the plug and then plug so that you couldn't see where those screw heads were. It really felt good to get to this point right here because I was actually putting on the first major board there for the deck, and then working until I could flip around and come at it from the other side and not have to use those plywood pieces to work off of. That's my neighbor Hubert there that you see off to the side. He would come over and lend a hand in some situations where I needed an extra hand, and of course, good advice. He has a lot of life experience. He's retired. Nothing like having good neighbors. Getting on a roll here and getting some method about the process. And in just a moment, I'll show you some more detail on how to do this decking a little bit better close up. I really had to just take it a little bit at a time and not feel like I had to rush things and do it right. And so that part of it was very satisfying as I went. First thing I do here is I just line it up to maintain my gap here for expansion, and also basically match the gap in between each of these pieces of decking. And then we have these Trex clips that we use to put in here, but each time that I put in these clips, I can't tighten these all the way down yet until this clip goes in. So I'll just line it up. So we have this universal fastener system with Trex, and a box of 50 of these, I believe, 90, and they look like this. And then this tool that is more recent, I'd say in the last year, that you can use to actually hold it in, and it just feeds it right in. So you just clip this universal fastener in, just like that. Pretty straightforward. Each board I line it up so that I can have my gap equal at the end, equal the gap in between, and use this to pull it in. So pull it all the way snug, pull this in, and just pull it down, and don't all the way tighten it. I usually leave just a slight bit up, about a 1/16 of an inch, and then you go ahead and snug in the one behind it. You have to keep these slightly loose so that you have a little bit of play whenever you go to put your next board in. Next piece of decking in, I guess I should say. Clip in, pull tight. Use my thumb to feel my next joist and tighten. But not all the way down. Pulls out real nice, and then snug the next one in. Same with this one. Use my thumb to find my joist. Because of this Rain Escape, it's kind of hard to tell. And then tighten it down. Finish this one up. Be real careful. I have snapped a couple of these, just they're not, these screws aren't super strong. I found that they will, if you put too much on them, they'll just break. So found just that happy medium there. So I usually do 3 on one side and go to the other end right down there and do 3, and then either finish it out coming this way or come back to this side and finish it going that way. That way it makes it a little easier when you get in the middle parts, that you don't have to pull it quite as hard. This right here is a necessity. I've tried to save my knees. There you go. Happen again. So, it hasn't happened a lot, but here it happens again. So what happened here is I went to tighten it down and it just snapped. Didn't really put any extra on it. So when that happens, got this piece here, then I'm gonna have to use a set and a hammer and knock that screw down a little bit further, move this slightly over to another spot on the joist, and try to reattach it. This is the 3rd time it's happened. And as you can see, that's not too bad. Not too bad on the percentages, but it does happen. And so, just so happened, it happened there. What I have been doing is I've been just putting a pencil X mark there, and then moving on, and then come back and do that. Where I can do several at the same time. Every now and then you just have to step back and admire your work, and helps drive you to continue. So I've got these 20-foot sections of Trex decking, and they come about 20, almost 21, 21 and a half, 20 and a half, 20 and a half an inch, and then sometimes 21. So what I did is I went ahead and set my length on the first one, because whenever I'm done, I'm going to just use a chalk line and a track saw and even up all these before I put on my picture frame edge. And as you can see here, I'll also put down this butyl tape. I had to end up adding 3 2x10s to the edge to make this part work out, because I wouldn't have been able to put my picture frame on here like I wanted to. So 3 extra studs on this edge, 3 on the other edge. So I ended up picking up about 9 inches of deck space, and then 2 on the front end to have something to connect the picture frame to. So the picture frame will go right down this edge, and then come around over here, and this will be where it's a little more fun in terms of the angles. But I do want to picture frame it all out, and according to my calculations, these I will run to the edge of my picture frame. I'll end up with about a little over half on my last one that butts up against the picture frame. So that part's better than what I expected, because you just don't want to run just an inch or so. That makes it a little tougher to put down. So I'm over halfway done, the top anyway. So it's moving right along, and I'm getting to a place here pretty soon where I will stop, and I won't get any more done on this part until the spring. So just have to work when I can, and sometimes you run out of time, and you just have to pick back up and just stay with it until you get it done. A lot of the tools that we use in this project, of course, the circular saw, the jigsaw, the driver, the drill. This is a 15 gauge finish nailer, a pin nailer, just to kind of set things in place sometimes on the smaller things, like this little bit of extra trim work I'm doing on these, giving it a more finished look. Of course, your speed square. I'll be using this whenever I start working on the rails, because I want to have ability to wire them for lighting. Square, which all those supplies. Of course, you couldn't do this hardly. You could, but it would be a lot more difficult without the miter saw. I've been storing everything under here in between days of working. Create a jig here. That'll give me an angle. So we're in the spring here, and I actually had started working on the stairs and then finished this part off. So if you see those stairs coming up here in a little bit, then just know that that part's coming next. I had to clean this part up and then add that butyl tape. Since it had set through the winter, I had to clean it up pretty good to be able to get the tape to attach properly. I'm seeing the finish line on this part of the process as far as the top of the deck, and it's feeling pretty good to be able to get this completed. You can see here that I ended up with a portion about 1.5 inches, 2 inches there as that final piece, which I didn't like, but it was, the trade-off was right in front of the door, ended up being really close right here. And so that part I liked. It was only about 3/4 of an inch off there. So that part ended up pretty good. And you can see the stairs there that I've already been working on. And that's my setup in the yard, which worked out real well there. A little bit of chalk line and then straightening up that edge over there before I put that final piece of picture frame on the deck. Here I'm using my oscillating tool to knock off the final little pieces. I got it really close with the saw, but then I didn't want to go into that butyl tape, so I used that to do that. And here you see the nice straight edge. Get ready to add that final bit of butyl tape and then put my final piece of picture frame on there. Getting that last piece of picture frame on, and a few imperfections. It wasn't exactly square, but with the fascia board and also just visually you can't see, you know, that imperfection really, so it worked out real good. And here it is, the finished deck top. Felt really good to get this part done. I was looking forward to the railing and the stairs, finishing the stairs. Overall, just happy with this. Well, on to the stairs, and these were in terrible condition. They were also very bad as far as functionality. It's like a billy goat climbing these things. Rise and the run were really not correct, and so it was definitely, you can see all the rot there on that stringer. But had to remove it completely, kind of clean up that area, and then started to try to determine what kind of rise and run and how wide I wanted those stairs to be. I definitely wanted it to be more comfortable climbing, and so that means extending it out a little bit more onto that concrete portion of the pad that you see there. I wanted to be able to use that pad. So here I'm just trying to work for level and determine that length of run that I'm going to do. And could have used a string level, I guess, there, but I must not have had one and didn't want to go get one. So I'm calculating here what I need, and then we're going to go ahead and start cutting those. This is considered an open stair design, and in this you have to cut all of those notches out of the stringer itself. So the closed version, I think you use cleats and kind of work off that direction, but I wanted this to be open so I could put my own railing up for this as well. So I'm just cutting all of these notches out based on those measurements. And I have 4 of these stringers to complete. So now that I have that first stringer cut, I can use it as a template, and I use that same first cut stringer for a template for the remaining 3 that I was going to need for this set of stairs. Again, let me re-emphasize using the first one as a template for all of the remaining ones, because you don't want to gradually get a larger stringer based on that template. Then we just go ahead and put them in place and get a good feel for what that's going to look like. And I'm measuring here, double checking, triple checking everything as far as width, and then making sure I have a level workspace from the top, and going ahead and marking where those stringers will attach. I'm going to have to add some extra material to the bottom there to make sure that it rests against something solid, because I wanted to make sure that that rise at the top matched the rest of the stairs to have a consistent rise all the way down the stairs. So here I am getting ready to determine a top, I guess we could call that the header of the stringers, to be able to attach to the top of the deck. And those 2 inner pieces have to be cut. And then also determine my exact location, final location, after you can see all the chicken scratch there, of where I want the stairs to meet up with the deck top, because I have to also allow for my rails that are going to go down that stairwell. So I'm not quite sure what happened to my sound, but for a good portion of this the stair build, I do not have sound on my video, so I'm having to do voiceover to give you an idea of what I'm trying to do here. But here I'm talking about where I'm wanting those stairs to land in conjunction with where I want them to be connected to the deck itself. Of course, I'm going back and forth and going over this to make sure that before I connect them, that I have everything located where it should be. And that is always a bit of a challenge, but trying to make sure I work through this on the wood itself before I make all of those final connections. So you'll see my 4 stringers there that I'm talking about, as far as where they meet up and how that's going to be level and how that's going to meet the rise for the remainder of the steps. Okay, and the width is what I'm talking about here, I think, because I want to make sure the steps match the width of this pad. You can see on the old steps where they were quite a bit more narrow. I think about 8 inches on each side less than what I'm building. And here's my setup over here that I'm using for this deck build, and all my materials are out here. I'm bringing you over here probably because I wanted to bring attention to these cutouts and how I was going to plan on using those cutouts for the steps themselves, and you'll see that later. But checking my level here, good and level on that step, and then across we have good level, and we're ready to go ahead and start attaching everything. So here I'm kind of double checking my rise on the stairs from the top of the stair to the top of the deck, and I'm having to take into consideration those Trex composite stair material and deck material, so that when those are put on, that it is still matching up with what I'm looking for, around 7.25 to 7.5 on the rise. There really are a lot of resources out there for doing stairs for a deck, and I took full advantage of those. There are calculators for determining rise and run, and how you can get all those measurements basically. And then also I think this was a YouTube video that I ran on, where they used this PVC trim on the bottom where it meets the concrete, so it will deter from rotting. And so I purchased 8-foot sections of this PVC, and then attached it on the bottom where it met the concrete, so that it would keep that from rotting out. All the wood that you see that I'm using here is treated lumber, so that I can get the max life out of this set of stairs. And I've used every possible method to preserve this so that it can last for a long time. I was able to see where the rot points were in the previous set of stairs, and I think the things that I'm doing are going to help that. So we'll see. Of course, 20 years or so, I will be 77 years old, so I certainly hope it lasts that long. You can see here that I used the maximum width of that pad at the bottom, and then also in my configurations for determining rise and run, I guess in this case run, I configured it to make it where that pad was like the last step of the stairs, the same width as the stairs, and also depth. Of course, securing the stairs to the concrete pad on the bottom is important, so that's what I'm doing here. And now I'm cutting some support pieces for the stairs themselves. I do have to have something to secure the Trex to, so that's what you see me doing here. I'm putting in these not only support pieces for that, but also something that I can screw the Trex material to. I'm using stainless wood screws for this so that they don't rust and weaken the structure in time. Here's where I started putting good use to those cutouts in play on these corners, so that I would have something to screw that Trex material into, because I'm going to picture frame the stairs out as well to match the top. And here we are at the completion of those supports being added. Make sure you use a bit that will give you a countersink anytime you're attaching material like this to those stringers, because if you don't, it will split out and you'll be dealing with a lot of issues. So word to the wise, I made the mistake. Make sure you use a countersink bit when installing any screws into the stringers. This is my partner one day. My grandson came by and made him a little hammer so that he could help Pop. He was a good supervisor. So this is the fascia board that I used of the Trex material to put on the side of the stairwell and give it a nice matching look for the rest of the deck. I attached it using the Trex screws, and there's a bit that you purchase that does all of the pre-drill countersinking, which is what you see here. I ended up coming back to this and went with a countersink and plug so that it would camouflage into the material itself. All these materials that I am using, including those Trex plug cutters and such, will be listed in the description. So make sure if you're interested in any materials for your project that I have used, you can find that in my description to this video. Here I'm also measuring and marking all the spots that I will be putting screws so that there's some consistency in the placement of those screws. This next part was pretty messy, but it worked great in that I used a router with a trim bit to cut all of this fascia, and then at the end I had to use a saw to knock off that remaining portion. But it did work great, and then I just kind of cleaned up the corners here. So here's the finished portion of that, and all of the stairs have all their support. So next I will be working on picture framing each step. As I said before, I'm trying to work on measures that will preserve these stairs for as long as possible, and so that includes using this butyl tape on all these edges that could receive any exposure to the elements. So here's the different bit that I ended up coming back to countersink and plug, and what you do basically is try to make sure the plug grain matches up with the grain that you have on your deck, and it's pretty easy to do and certainly looks really good too. So here we are on the picture framing portion of the steps, and there's a bit of trial and error in this process because not every step is perfect. So you do have areas where here I'm using my table saw to rip some of the boards for the stairs as well. So this is a process that just you do one step at a time, and no pun intended there. I'm countersinking everything and using my plugs for this as well. They really do pretty much disappear. I'm looking for them there now, and I can barely see them. It really is one step at a time, because I would have to go back and nibble away at some of the areas to make sure they're a better match, because ultimately I want a good visual on all these angles and consistency in each step. Here you can see me using those spacers to make sure the space matched up to the top of the deck. Each step that I did, I was able to get some processes in place, and everything pretty well was matching up with measurements and all of that. It was just a matter of getting them all cut correctly and then attaching them. Then I would run into little issues here and there that I had to get creative, but that's all part of the fun. Here's an example of that. Notice a little bit of a um, difference there in those two pieces. For this situation, I just used a shim and pull that up a little bit and then break it off. But that would bring it up to where it was level and flush. Here, where you see me disappearing behind the deck stairs, is I'm actually securing that small piece from behind the deck. Well, here's the completion of the deck stairs, and this part took me out of my comfort zone a little bit, so I'm really proud of the completion of it, and I feel like that the deck stairs are much better than they were previously, especially in the comfort of walking up and down. Okay, on to the railing, and I ended up using Trex composite railing to go along with everything else Trex in this remodel. To do this railing, it consists of several parts. The first is this sleeve that's made by Trex. So I went with that, and then I would cut all of those to size. And then the next is this veranda post. Now this particular type of post I purchased at Home Depot, and it is the kind that you can connect directly to the deck, which is why I made the deck extend out with those extra 2x10s so I could be able to connect to something solid. So that's what I'm doing here. I went around and devised a plan for the rails, and I used those little pieces of paper you see there and mapped it all out so that everything was equal and as close to the same as possible as far as distance between rails. Then as I would install these rails, I would have to use these spacers, basically these washers, stainless steel washers that I would add to whatever side needed to be able to make it level. And as I would tighten it down, I would just tighten it as needed to make it level. Okay, here I'm double checking just to make sure I have everything lined up properly as far as the distance between each. You can see there I had to adjust that just a little bit, and I used this marking pen or pencil to be able to line that all up. I will put all of the things that I'm using in this in the description, so if you have any questions on the materials that I used, including these fasteners, same fasteners that I used to connect my joist around the edges. Those were the same kind of fasteners. So, and of course you can see here we're level. So once I had all the posts in place, then I started going ahead and drilling this hole for the wiring. This wiring is going to be for the low voltage lighting that I'm going to be using on the posts. And you can see there's two wires on that one end because I have two different lights there. And I'm just getting it in place so that it's all ready whenever I go to put the sleeves on. And this is something that I had to do to each one of those inserts to make sure it slid over the top and pull those wires. So there's a little bit of custom work that you have to do there. Now I'm working on the lighting itself and attaching it to the posts. And I'll show you that lighting that I used. And again, links will be in the description. The luminary is what I used here. Come in a 6-pack. I think all in all I used about 3 of these packs, 6 packs. I think I used about 18 lights on the deck itself. And I did buy another 6-pack that I'm going to use on the outside fascia portion of the deck. But it comes with a remote, but it also has software an app that you can use, which I haven't even used those remotes. I just use the app to make any settings. And these particular lights are not just the white light or soft white or cool white lights. They are also all color, so you can change and use color for them if you'd like. So I'm just lining everything up, getting everything wired down through there, and then I'll attach these to the posts as a very last step. You'll see probably in one of these video clips where I've completed basically one section, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to get a feel for what the process would be for all the steps. Right there you see it in the top left-hand corner. So I wanted to make sure everything had a kind of a process about everything that I did, made sure the lighting worked and all of that on that one section. And then I just go around and work on each one of these one by one. Here I'm using waterproof wire nuts so that if any water gets down in there, it will keep it from shorting out. And so we just keep working with each one, and it becomes just really a repeating process, and it does make it a little easier to complete, knowing how it's going to go. And here it's getting dark, you can see. So next I just am working on the topper. This pulls everything together, and just tap these in. You have to make sure that you don't cut too high on your posts, otherwise you don't have anything for these to line up around. Very satisfying feeling getting these in. So next we move on to the rail kit, and so I have to buy one rail kit per section, and I've already done this one time, so I kind of have a good feel. Made my mistakes already in that first set that I did have to fix. So I cut it on the wrong spot, I believe. But at this point, I'm just walking through what's all in the rail kit. You got the top and bottom, then you have the hardware, and that supporting piece on the very bottom. So you want to get it in place, make sure that you have the same width between the rails, and so that's what I'm doing here, making sure that width is going to be accurate and repeatable. And then I do the top and cut those, and then put these brackets on each top and bottom rail. And you do allow just a little bit offset there so that it will pull tight against the post. And then getting all of the rails in. I'll fast forward this to get you through it because it is a little bit of a process and not quite as fast as this when you're doing it in real time, obviously. And then make sure it's centered on the post, and you will have to use a long extension for your driver on this portion because of the angle. These are the center supports on the rail, and this is actually something that's fairly new, I think, in the rail kit. I don't think they added this a couple of years ago, but you tighten that up and then just put one screw in it to hold it in place, and it just provides that middle support for the rail. You can see here I'm using those blocks to set the height. I think it was 3 3/4 was the height, and that's a recommended height for the bottom of the rail. And then just follow that same process, and I just kept repeating that process for each section. Just kind of have to plan on taking a little bit of time. It's not a super fast process. Probably the longest process is actually getting everything cut properly and then put in that center support here. So everything's not in exact order in this video because this is the transformer and the low voltage wire connectors that I use, and the wire that I use to do all of the wiring for the lighting on the deck. And this is a transformer here that I'm taking out, and I'll have a link to that in the description. So if you're interested, I did a little bit of research before purchasing this particular one. It is a wireless transformer, and it has that antenna on top. And the wire connectors that I'm using are really great if you have the opportunity to wire low voltage. They really come in handy because they basically allow you to do that continuity of a wire where you don't have to cut it. So you might want to look into that if you're doing something like this. That's the 12 volt, and then the common, which I think I'm going to have a problem with because I don't know which is which on the actual device, so we're going to test it out on this first one. So I've got my roll here, and I'm just going to pick enough off of it to go around, start connecting these in. Low voltage wiring is not rocket science, and if you follow some basic instructions, you shouldn't have any problem with wiring for something like this. And that's those wire connectors that I mentioned earlier. So we've got lighting, and it's all working. I have it set on a timer currently, so it comes on about 5 o'clock in the evening and shuts off about midnight every night. So I glued together some plywood and indoor-outdoor glue that I'm going to attach to the side here to extend the rail out more this way so it can line up with the top. So we're going to mark it. So this is what I get to notch out. Now this part really is something that, I didn't really plan on this from the beginning. I didn't know exactly how the railing was going to be attached. I originally thought I would just put a post on top, but after I got the stairs done, I realized I really didn't have enough to bite into for a really solid base for the rails. So that's when this workaround came about. And it ended up actually being a really good thing because it gave me more width on the stairs themselves and ended up looking pretty good with the way that we finished it out. So I'll let you see that as I get through this portion here. So we ended up with 4. That's the second one there, and the third one, and the fourth one, which is right there. So rather than just putting one of those screws down, I felt like a better, more solid way to do this and avoid splitting something out would be to use bolts. So I had to get some threaded rods, which I made those into the bolts for this. Again, notice I'm angling that particular, those particular bolts there, or screws, and then bolt down the outside. And this, I feel, especially on this rails to the stairway, more important because people are holding on to them and there's going to be more pressure or activity usage, I guess, than on the regular rails. Of course, having level posts is very important for this to all work out. So I'm double checking my level here. So here I'm just, since I've got that first one done, I am now just working on the other 3. Kind of a process that I've used on everything is do one, make sure I've got everything the way that I want it, and then proceed on to the rest. And so that's what I'm doing here. And you'll notice again, I'll mention this again, that on those inside screws, you'll notice I angle them slightly, and that's to make sure they get as much meat of the stairway stringer as possible. It's kind of funny here, I got all these all bolted down, leveled, and then realized that I didn't do the wiring, so I had to come back and then take them all off, re-drill for the wiring, and then go back to I was a little bit frustrated about that. I will say that one thing I didn't do during this portion of the remodel on these posts and rails is I did take my time and I didn't rush. I think that's super important. Sometimes I would just have to stop and pick up the next day. Of course, I'm working on weekends and sometimes in the evenings. And with a project this big, it's just not worth rushing and making a mistake that you regret and have to live with and look at every day. Looks like Lucky made a grand appearance there. It's our rat terrier, Lucky. Or my daughter's rat terrier, Lucky. So this is what I was talking about earlier when I said sometimes you have to do something that is necessary to make a project work, and this is one of those things, and had to build out these supports, and I wanted to cover them, make them look nice, so I purchased some of this flashing. I think it's called it's in the aisle where all the guttering is at the big box stores, and I was able to conform that and make it fit around that plywood fabrication, make it work for covering those blocks up. And since it's black, it matches the rest of it, and I think it actually turned out really nice and looked appealing once it was complete. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you think about this workaround. So in this part, I'm just getting the posts in place and the lighting connected, and you'll see them lights come on here in a second. Part of the process is connecting them to the Bluetooth, and then once they're connected, you can then change the color of the light itself. I opted for the warmer color light. So this part I used a rail kit. Now you have, the stair rail kit, which is different than the top rail kit in that it's a little bit longer and the holes in it are angled, and it just has everything for the stair rail kit. So that's the big difference in the two different types of rails. And of course, they're a little bit more expensive, I think. Lining everything up, making sure the distance from the stair to the rail is consistent, and that's just a little bit of work to get it to that point. Butyl tape here and sealing up around the bottom where these exposed ends are for this plywood. So hopefully help protect it and keep it from getting water down in there. Since doing this, I probably would have went a little bit different direction with this part. They have a sealant that you can use on end grain that I should have probably used there before I even attached any of the posts. So if you have something like that you're doing, I would recommend that you use a liquid sealer on top of those exposed end grains. There's really not a lot of room for error whenever you're doing screwing these to the posts, so really make sure you have everything lined up properly, because if you have to move a screw slightly and you've already screwed through that composite, it can be a real pain in the rear, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so here's the rail completion. Let me know what you think of the choices here, and if you have any feedback for me, I'd be happy to hear it. So here is the finishing portion of the fascia, and I did use the plugs here to make sure that it had a nice finished look. I think I had to wait a bit to get this board in. It was back ordered or something, and everything was done for a bit before I was able to get this part done. As you can see, I built some little jigs to help hold it in place so that I could work by myself on this. And underneath the deck, you'll see my next project. A gazebo that I'll be building on top. And if you watch this much, you get a little sneak peek of one of the future videos coming up. And then even after that, I do a skirting around the bottom of this deck to hide the unsightly storage underneath, which will be another project for a video. And here we are with the deck rail completion.
Celebrate and have a good